Jiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Dark Souls 2, played on Xbox 360. You know, it always takes some mental prepping for me before I can get some momentum into a Souls game. Okay, first of all, if you don't pay attention to the game world, the Dark Souls series and Demon Souls before it are known for their punishing difficulty. I generally try to define this a little better by saying you can't just play this game like you do every other game. You're not a superhero, you're not an overpowered space marine, you can't just charge into a room and fight everything in it all at once. You just have to change the way you play. I walk into every new room with shield up, constantly searching the environment. When you spot an enemy, you have to look for ways to take just one or just a couple at a time. You look for bottlenecks, and you find tactical advantages. As you kill enemies, you accumulate souls, which are used both as currency and as experience, where you can purchase stat points at an ever-increasing cost. If you die, and you will, your bloodstain is left on the ground with your soul collection, and on your next, slightly weaker life, you have to reclaim those souls on that turn or they're lost forever. Your humanity and maximum HP can be restored with the use of a human effigy, returning you to full strength until your next failure. Dark Souls 2 puts you once again into the body of an undead trapped by a curse, this time in the kingdom of Dran Lake. Souls 2 uses the same storytelling mechanic as previous games, not making your goal obvious, no destination markers, no real instructions on what to do next. So you just start exploring, working your way through until you hit a wall and have to find another way. There are about 30 bosses in the core game, and boss deaths are always what I use as a progress marker while I play. Some are optional, and 4 are the main story drivers as you seek to reignite the primal bonfires, linking them once again in an attempt to bring light to the world. You begin the game with character creation, a starting class determining just the gear you start with in your starting stats. From there you can put your points in however you see fit. Spellcasting power derived from intelligence and faith. Weapon power increased by strength and or dexterity depending on the type. Endurance increases your max stamina, which is super important because nearly every action you take drains some. Rolling and blocking and running, attacking, and spellcasting. Vitality increases your equipment load and fortunately doesn't count your inventory, only what you have on. Attunement will increase the number of spells you can have equipped and the cast for each one. And adaptability increases dodge and item consumption speed. I built a sorcerer as I usually do. I enjoy the caster classes in most games. I finished the game around level 130, and I'll admit, I looked to the online community for help on where stats cap out and begin diminishing returns, for the minimum needed for my upper level spells, and suggestions of stats for equipment I could be using. You have limited ability to respec, gained by the acquisition of an item called a soul vessel. Now Dark Souls 2 can be played online, which has its advantages and disadvantages. While there isn't a true campaign co-op, you can play summon signs where you can be called into other people's worlds to help them defeat bosses. In contrast, your world can also be invaded while online by those seeking to destroy you. Now, I'll be honest here, I played online with the first Dark Souls game. I ended up in a 20-minute pretty much stalemate that just wasted time and resources, so I kind of played offline and never looked back after that point. Another disadvantage to offline mode, though, is the inability to look at messages left by other players, warning of danger and missteps, which can be helpful to know if a mimic is going to bite your face off. Now you kind of have to trick the game to get into offline mode, as there's not really an explicit setting. You can either unplug a network cable on your console, or with Xbox 360, if you start a party, the game won't let you online. Problem solved. I believe some people do go pretty hardcore with the PvP though, as you can align with a Covenant in-game and raise reputation, but hey, I'm on a schedule here and didn't spend much time dabbling with that in this already immensely secret-filled game. One place Dark Souls 2 really excels is in atmosphere. From its creepiest crypts to its glorious castle skylines to fog-cursed forests to glowing flower swamps and deteriorated underground caves, just the feelings generated while exploring can keep you tense and on the edge of your seat. And while there are a few jump scare moments, the game really derives its horror feel from tension, of never really knowing what you're going to find and the disturbing character designs of what you do. The boss character models particularly stand out, especially for that console generation. While the human characters are nothing to speak of in terms of graphical fidelity, the environments do truly shine. There is so much equipment in this game, you'll definitely be able to find something that fits your playstyle. Well, as long as your playstyle is slightly behind the button press with wind-up and cooldown animations, that is. It's actually almost overwhelming trying to figure out which pieces of gear are best for your build, which stats you need leveled up for it, and then saving up the appropriate amount of upgrading materials for it. The crazy part about it is the number of hidden chests and secret passageways spread out everywhere. Some require keys or drop from an enemy to get through, and And Dark Souls 2 has items called Ferris Lock Stones that can be inserted into the mouth of these hidden faces in each area that will activate different features and reveal hidden pathways. Nearly all items and equipment have descriptive flavored text giving away pieces of lore and history, and actually part of the main plot that can only be discerned from these items. After I finished the game, I actually went and watched about an hour's worth of YouTube videos about the lore, or at least theories, that the community has tried to put together, and nearly all, if not everyone, cites specific pieces of equipment for their facts as the basis of their theories. All that said, I wound up using pretty much the same flame longsword I found really early in the game, as it seemed to scale with my intelligence. I used an armor set from about 10 hours in, and in the last area I found a staff that would have replaced my starting staff had I not already upgraded it to plus 10 and had the mask to do the new one. And one other thing Dark Souls 2 gets is it has a unique way of making it feel like old school gaming. Now, not just through the hardcoreness of dying in single hits and watching boss patterns to learn when to strike, but also in the world structure itself. I mean, I didn't find myself making comparison to more recent games like Darksiders, for example, or Ocarina of Time for what I like to call the item procedural game, but honestly found myself thinking about Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest on NES. I mean, granted, we're not kneeling next to walls for multiple seconds with a red crystal in hand, waiting for a whirlwind to come pick us up, but some instances very nearly felt the same. We don't need a super bomb to open these doors like in Metroid, but we need to find the King's Ring. Not to mention this lovely map in the abandoned house in Majula that puts a flame next to each major boss that's taken down, which reminds me of the statue in Super Metroid. While you do have friends in the central hub city of Majula, like the blacksmith and merchant and the Jade Herald where you level up, it's almost as if these people are in a trance and truly don't care that you, undead, even exist, giving you kind of that feeling of isolation and loneliness, as if you were on the planet Zebes with Samus. Dark Souls 2 isn't perfect though. As I opened up with the review, I definitely have to get prepped for the frustration level before I begin, but there are still a couple places where I will call bull on it. I very much disagree with a giant wind-up of a massive attack that spins at just the last second, changing course to come down on your head. I realize it's to make you home and practice your timing, but if that's the case, they just need to make the swing come down faster. And while that eventually can be worked around with practice, getting hit when you're clearly out of the animation cannot. There were several bosses I was able to take down on my first attempt, and a couple that took several tries, and there was one that super cheated. I even found a Reddit post after the fact that said, quote, "I finally decided, you don't kill the smelter demon, you just keep doing better and better against him until you finally decide to go around." Fortunately, one of the features of being freshly full human is you can find an NPC summon point, where you can take an AI-controlled person in with you and help with the fight, providing you've talked to them on the necessary occasions. Most other cheat moments can be taken with a sigh and a facepalm, but man, I do have to vent about the Shrine of Amana and getting to that second bonfire. First of all, bonfires, by the way, are basically your save points. You can travel between bonfires once they've been lit, and resting at one restores your life to its maximum, your spell count, but it also resets all enemies in the area, excluding bosses, forcing you to start over again carving your path. Now, one huge difference in Dark Souls 2 from 1 is that enemies will stop respawning after they've been killed a certain number of times, clearing the way for you eventually, but also stopping you from being able to grind out levels in the same spot indefinitely. One aside to this is the presence of bonfire aesthetics, which raise the difficulty in one New Game Plus level, giving you more punishing mobs, and if there's a boss tied to that fire, they get stronger as well. Oh yeah, New Game Plus can be done a ridiculous amount of times, each time increasing the difficulty of everything, but also with the promise of new and better loot. Now, where was I again? Oh yeah, the Shrine of Amana. Second bonfire. The entire area is covered with anywhere from shin-high to waist-high water, limiting your mobility. There are weird lizard things that live under the surface of the water that you can just barely see in the shallowest of parts, otherwise they're hidden. There are some super aggressive monk-looking guys with halberds that usually attack in pairs, and there are some sorceresses with homing magic bolts that will start firing at you from forever away. They'll hit you around corners, and they never stop shooting. In this particular section, the door is really far away. There are 2 sorceresses and 2 monks and a healer behind them with uncountable abominations in the water. Not to mention, you can't see the continental shelf under the water here unless you're looking down constantly. Now, like I said, you can kill them and they'll stop popping after repeated deaths, but until you can actually make it to some of them and kill them, not gonna happen. If there was anything that would make me not play through Dark Souls 2 again, it's this area. Luckily, just past that door and a little further down the road is a boss I killed on my first attempt, and he was actually really cool and creepy looking, so it lifted my frustration pretty quickly. Jumping is another irritation in this game. You run with the B button on 360, and then you jump by pushing in the left stick, but only while in a full sprint. It takes a good deal of stamina to make a jump, and if your bar is just refilled from being completely drained, you can't start running again immediately, even though you think you might be able to, and then you press the left stick and fall into a pit. But really, that's on me. All of this is just player awareness. This game just doesn't really play like other games you know. If you can learn its ways, you can be successful. And just a quick comment on the relative difficulty too. I think Demon's Souls, which is in a different universe according to the devs, is the hardest from Software that I've played so far. Dark Souls 1 took the difficulty down just a notch in my opinion, but it's possibly just because the game mechanics were better polished being Software's second outing, and I kinda knew what I was doing that time. Dark Souls 2 overall though, it felt easier. I mean, that's not to say by any means the game is easy though. Now at this point there are a few DLC packs that add additional areas and bosses, and there's also an HD edition for current gen consoles called Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. This includes all of the DLC, rearranges some things to make it new for returning players, and gives it a decent graphical upgrade if you're interested. I really need a hybrid classification for Dark Souls 2 because while it's definitely an action role-playing game, thanks to its numbers, there's also a 3D adventure core in its middle. I will use my action RPG rating system though because that's what I did for the first game back in the day, and Dark Souls 2 lands at an 85 out of 100. This is Jiro from Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.